Robert Wilson looked out his kitchen window at the falling autumn leaves. At 62 years old, his life had settled into a quiet rhythm after retiring from teaching high school mathematics for over 30 years. His modest two-bedroom house in the small town of Millfield felt emptier since his wife Martha passed away 3 years ago. Their two adult children, Sarah and Michael, had moved to opposite coasts years before, rarely finding time to visit. The silence that once felt peaceful now seemed to echo with loneliness. Robert sipped his coffee and glanced at the clock. He needed to leave soon for his volunteer shift at the Millfield Community Center's after-school program. Maybe I should get a dog, he muttered to himself, not for the first time. The community center buzzed with energy as elementary school children worked on homework, played games, and participated in various activities. Robert had been volunteering twice a week for the past year, mainly helping students with math. It gave structure to his week and purpose to his days. "Mr. Wilson, can you help me with these fractions?" A small voice interrupted his thoughts. Robert turned to find Zoe Johnson looking up at him with determined brown eyes. At 7 years old, she was small for her age, with dark curly hair pulled back in two puffs, secured with yellow ribbons that matched her sweater. "Of course, Zoe. Let's see what we've got here," he said, pulling up a chair beside her. As they worked through the problems, Robert noticed how quickly Zoe caught on. Her face lit up when she solved a particularly tricky question. He had been helping her for several weeks now and was impressed by her eagerness to learn despite the challenges she faced. "You've got a natural talent for numbers," Robert told her. Zoe beamed at the compliment. "My foster mom says I'm smart, but she's too busy with the little kids to help me." Robert knew from the center's director that Zoe had been in the foster system since age 4, moving between 4 different homes already. Despite this instability, she maintained good grades and a curious spirit. Over the next few months, Robert found himself looking forward to the days when Zoe would be at the center. He started bringing interesting math puzzles just for her and celebrated when she mastered new concepts. One Tuesday in January, Zoe didn't show up. Robert felt a strange emptiness as he helped other children. When she missed the next session, too, he asked the director about her absence. "Zoe's foster placement didn't work out," Ms. Daniels explained with a sigh. "She's been moved to a temporary home until they find something more permanent." Something shifted inside Robert that day. The thought of Zoe bouncing between homes, her education disrupted again and again, troubled him deeply. That night, he couldn't sleep. Images of Zoe's bright smile and determined eyes kept appearing in his mind. After a week of restless nights, Robert made an appointment with a social worker at the county's Family Services Department. "I'd like information about becoming a foster parent," he said when he sat down in her office. The social worker, Miss Thompson, looked surprised. "For a specific child?" "Yes," Robert admitted. "Zoe Johnson. I've been tutoring her at the community center." Miss Thompson's expression changed to one of concern. "Mr. Wilson, fostering is a significant commitment, especially at your age. And there are additional considerations when the child comes from a different racial background than yours." "I understand that," Robert said firmly. "But I also understand what it means to see potential going to waste. Zoe deserves stability." As he drove home that afternoon, Robert knew his life was about to change dramatically. He had no idea how his family, friends, or neighbors would react to his decision. All he knew was that somewhere across town, a bright little girl needed a home, and he had one to offer. News traveled fast in Millfield. Within days of Robert beginning the foster parent application process, whispers spread through the small town. At the grocery store, conversations would suddenly stop when he walked down an aisle. Old friends made excuses to end phone calls quickly. Even at church, Robert noticed some people choosing seats far from his usual pew. "Have you lost your mind, Dad?" Sarah's voice came through his phone speaker, sharp with disbelief. Robert had finally told his children about his plans to foster Zoe. "I've never been more clear-headed," Robert replied calmly, though his hand tightened around the phone. "You're 62. You should be planning cruises and enjoying retirement, not raising a child. And a black child? What do you know about her culture, her hair care, the challenges she'll face?" Sarah continued. Michael's reaction had been similarly discouraging. "People will talk, Dad. They'll think it's weird. Have you really thought this through?" Robert had thought of little else for weeks. His house, once perfectly suited to his solitary life, now seemed full of potential hazards. He spent weekends installing safety locks, buying a proper desk for homework, and reading every book he could find about transracial adoption and foster care. The mandatory foster parent classes were eye-opening. Robert was by far the oldest person there, and one of only 2 single applicants. During the cultural sensitivity training, he took detailed notes while younger couples looked bored. "Mr. Wilson," his instructor Ms. Jenkins said after class, "I admire your commitment, but I want to make sure you understand the challenges. Children in foster care often have trauma histories that manifest in complex behaviors." Robert nodded. "I was a teacher for 35 years. I've worked with children from all backgrounds and situations. I know it won't be easy, but I'm ready to learn whatever I need to." Ms. Jenkins smiled slightly. "And what about your community? Will they support you?" That question was harder to answer. Robert's next-door neighbor of 15 years, Bill Henderson, confronted him while he was mowing his lawn. "Heard you're bringing in some foster kid," Bill said, arms crossed. "Bit strange, don't you think? Man your age taking in a young girl? People are talking." The implication in Bill's tone made Robert's blood boil. He shut off the lawnmower and stood up straight, looking his neighbor in the eye. "People can talk all they want," Robert said evenly. "Zoe is a brilliant child who deserves stability and encouragement. That's all that matters to me." Bill shuffled uncomfortably. "Just saying what everyone's thinking. And how will you handle raising a black child? This town isn't exactly diverse." "Then perhaps it's time for some change," Robert replied. That night, Robert sat alone at his kitchen table, surrounded by half-completed paperwork. The home inspection was scheduled for next week. His doubts crept in with the evening shadows. Was he being selfish, thinking he could provide what Zoe needed? Was he equipped to help her navigate racial identity in this predominantly white town? The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Mrs. Davis, his former colleague from school. "Robert, I've been hearing things," she began. "I wanted to hear from you directly." After Robert explained, there was a pause on the line. "Well," Mrs. Davis finally said, "Martha would be proud. She always said you were the best person she knew. I think you'll be a wonderful foster father." Her words washed over him like a warm wave. For the first time since starting this journey, Robert felt a flicker of outside support. The next day, while shopping for bedding for Zoe's room, Robert ran into Ms. Daniels from the community center. "I heard Zoe might be coming to live with you," she said softly. "She's been asking about you, wondering when you'll be back to help with math." Robert's heart squeezed. "I'm trying my best to make it happen." Despite the whispers and doubts surrounding him, Robert continued forward. The spare bedroom slowly transformed with fresh yellow paint and a bookshelf filled with diverse children's books. On his refrigerator, he posted a list of local black hairstylists and culture-specific events in nearby cities. The path ahead would be difficult, but Robert Wilson had never backed down from a challenge, especially one that mattered this much. The day Zoe moved in was sunny but cool. Robert woke at 5 in the morning, too nervous to sleep. He checked Zoe's room one final time, adjusting the yellow bedspread and making sure the desk lamp worked properly. The social worker, Ms. Thompson, would bring Zoe at 10 o'clock. At 10:15, a gray sedan pulled into the driveway. Robert's heart pounded as he opened the door. Zoe stood beside Ms. Thompson, clutching a small backpack and a worn stuffed rabbit. She looked smaller than he remembered. "Hello, Zoe," Robert said gently. Zoe didn't smile or speak. She just stared at the house with wide, uncertain eyes. "Remember Mr. Wilson from the community center?" Miss Thompson prompted. "He's going to be your foster dad for a while." After the necessary paperwork and a brief house tour, Miss Thompson left. The sudden silence felt heavy between them. "Are you hungry?" Robert asked. "I made sandwiches." Zoe shook her head. "Would you like to see your room again?" Another head shake. Robert took a deep breath. "It's okay to be scared, Zoe. This is all new. Why don't you just sit here for a bit while I read my book? You don't have to talk until you're ready." He settled into his armchair with a novel, pretending to read while Zoe perched stiffly on the edge of the couch. After 20 minutes, her stomach growled loudly. "Maybe a small sandwich?" Robert offered without looking up. "Okay," came the tiny reply. The first week passed in a blur of awkward silences and careful conversations. Zoe answered questions with the fewest possible words. She ate little and slept poorly. Twice, Robert found her sleeping on the floor beside her bed rather than in it. My last foster mom got mad if I messed up the covers, Zoe explained when he asked. This is your bed, Robert told her firmly. You can bounce on it, build a fort with the blankets, whatever you like, it's yours. Zoe looked at him doubtfully. The second week, they faced their first public outing together. Grocery shopping. Robert felt the stares as soon as they entered the store. Mrs. Peterson from church did a double take and then pointedly turned down another aisle. The teenage cashier looked confused as she glanced between them. Is she yours? The girl asked as she scanned their items. Before Robert could answer, Zoe spoke up. He's my foster dad. It was the first time she had claimed any connection to him. Robert felt a small victory. That night, Zoe had a nightmare. Her screams jolted Robert awake. He rushed to her room and found her tangled in the sheets, still half asleep and terrified. You're safe, Zoe. You're at my house, remember? He soothed, keeping his distance until she fully woke. They were taking me away again, she whispered. No one is taking you anywhere, Robert promised. Would you like some hot chocolate? In the kitchen, as Zoe sipped her drink, she asked suddenly, Why did you want me? The question caught Robert off guard. Because you're special, Zoe. You're smart and brave and deserve a good home. But you're old. And white, she added bluntly. My last foster mom said old people don't want kids, especially not black kids. Robert's heart ached at her words. Well, she was wrong about that. I might be old, but I still know a wonderful person when I meet one. And yes, I'm white, which means there are things about your experience I won't understand. But I promise to listen and learn. Zoe studied him over her mug. Miss Thompson says this is temporary. For now, Robert admitted. But I'm hoping you might want to stay longer. The next day, Robert noticed Zoe examining the old cameras displayed on his bookshelf. They had been his hobby for years, though he rarely used them now. Would you like to learn how to use one? He asked. For the first time since her arrival, Zoe's face lit up with genuine interest. Can I? That weekend, they took their first photo safari around the neighborhood. Robert showed Zoe how to focus the simple digital camera he bought for her. She took pictures of everything. Flowers, bugs, interesting shadows, and even Mr. Henderson's cat. As they walked home, Zoe slipped her small hand into Robert's without a word. Something had shifted between them, a tiny seed of trust beginning to grow. That night, as Robert helped Zoe create a folder on his computer for her photos, she asked, Can we do this again next weekend? Every weekend if you want, Robert replied, his heart full. 3 months after Zoe's arrival, Robert sat in the principal's office at Millfield Elementary School, trying to keep his frustration in check. Principal Winters shuffled papers on her desk, avoiding his gaze. Mr. Wilson, I understand your concerns, but Zoe's academic struggles are likely due to her frequent moves between schools. There's no evidence of a learning disability. Robert leaned forward. I was a teacher for over 30 years. I know when a bright child is having specific difficulties. Zoe can solve complex math problems verbally, but struggles to read the questions. She reverses letters. She works twice as hard as other students for half the results. Perhaps you're being overly protective. Principal Winters suggested. Many foster parents. This isn't about me being a foster parent, Robert interrupted. This is about Zoe not getting the support she needs. I'm requesting formal testing, as is her right under education law. The principal sighed. Very well, I'll have the school psychologist contact you to begin the process. As they left the office, Robert caught sight of Ms. Adams, Zoe's teacher, whispering to another staff member. He distinctly heard confused old man, and probably won't even keep her. That evening, while helping Zoe with homework, Robert noticed how she squinted at the page, using her finger to trace each word. After 20 minutes, she pushed the book away in frustration. I hate reading. I'm stupid. You are not stupid, Robert said firmly. Your brain just works differently. And we're going to figure out exactly how, so school can be easier for you. Zoe looked up at him. My other schools said I was just being lazy. Robert's heart ached. Well, they were wrong. The testing process took weeks. When the results finally came back, Robert's suspicions were confirmed. Zoe had dyslexia and needed specialized instruction. Armed with this information, you return to Principal Winter's office to insist on an individualized education plan. The school district doesn't have the resources for specialized dyslexia programs, she explained. Then I'll drive her to the County Learning Center 3 times a week, Robert countered. The district is required to accommodate her needs. After much negotiation, a plan was created. Zoe would receive special instruction during certain periods and accommodation during regular classes. Robert taught her to use a voice-to-text program on a tablet he purchased. Meanwhile, social challenges emerged. When Zoe wasn't invited to classmate Lily Adams' birthday party, Robert learned that Lily's mother had told others she was uncomfortable with Zoe attending. That Saturday, during their photo safari in the park, Zoe was unusually quiet. "Is something bothering you?" Robert asked as she half-heartedly photographed a butterfly. "Why don't the other kids like me?" she finally asked. "Is it because I'm black? Or because I live with you and not a real family?" Robert carefully knelt beside her, ignoring the pain in his knees. "First, we are a real family. Different from some, but still real. Second, some people are afraid of anything different from what they know. Were people mean to you when you were little too?" Zoe asked. Robert nodded. "I was the poorest kid in my school, wore the same 3 shirts all year. Kids can be cruel about differences." "What did you do?" "I found things I loved and people who accepted me. Just like you love photography and have your friend Marcus from art class." Zoe considered this. "And Ms. Jackson at the hair salon. She says my hair is beautiful." "It absolutely is," Robert agreed. Ms. Jackson had been a godsend, teaching Robert basic hair care for Zoe and recommending products. That week, Robert spoke with Marcus's mother, who invited Zoe for a playdate. He also enrolled her in a photography class at the community center, where she met children from neighboring towns. When parent-teacher conferences arrived, Ms. Adams seemed surprised by Zoe's progress. "She's doing much better with the accommodations," she admitted. "And her photography project was quite impressive." Zoe just needed the right support, Robert said, leaving unspoken the fact that he had been the one to insist on it. As they walked to the car afterward, Zoe spotted her test paper displayed on the hallway bulletin board, her first since coming to live with Robert. "Can we put this on the fridge?" she asked excitedly. "Absolutely," Robert replied. "And maybe take a picture of it too." Zoe giggled, reaching for his hand as they walked to the car. The road ahead would still have challenges, but they were learning to face them together. 2 years passed. Zoe was now 10 years old and thriving in 5th grade with her proper learning accommodations. Robert, at 64, had settled comfortably into his role as a foster father. Their photo safaris had expanded to nearby cities, and Zoe's bedroom walls were covered with her best shots. One crisp October morning, Robert woke feeling unusually tired. The pressure in his chest seemed like heartburn, nothing serious. After making Zoe's lunch and seeing her onto the school bus, he decided to rest for a while. The pain grew worse. Sweat beaded on his forehead as a crushing sensation spread across his chest and down his left arm. Robert reached for the phone with trembling fingers and dialed 911. "My name is Robert Wilson," he managed to say. "I think I'm having a heart attack." His last clear thought before the ambulance arrived was of Zoe, who would pick her up from school. Zoe was in math class when the school counselor, Mrs. Bennett, appeared at the classroom door. Her serious expression made Zoe's stomach tighten. "So, please come with me," Mrs. Bennett said gently. In the counselor's office, Zoe learned that Robert had been taken to county hospital. Mrs. Bennett explained that he was very sick, but doctors were helping him. "Where will I go?" Zoe asked, her voice small. "Ms. Thompson from Social Services is coming to pick you up. You'll stay with an emergency foster family until Mr. Wilson recovers." Tears filled Zoe's eyes. "But I want to stay with Robert. He needs me." Mrs. Bennett patted her hand. "I know this is scary, but Mr. Wilson would want you to be brave." The emergency foster home belonged to the Garcia family, who had 3 other foster children. Mrs. Garcia was kind, but Zoe felt lost among strangers. That night, she clutched her stuffed rabbit and cried silently in the unfamiliar bed. "Please don't die," she whispered into the darkness. "Please don't leave me." At the hospital, Robert drifted in and out of consciousness. The heart attack had been severe. Without the quick emergency response, The doctor said he might not have survived. His first coherent question was about Zoe. She's with an emergency placement family, his nurse explained. Social services was notified immediately. Robert tried to sit up. I need to call her. She'll be terrified. The nurse gently pressed him back against the pillows. Tomorrow, right now, you need to rest. In the following days, an unexpected thing happened in Millfield. Mrs. Davis, Robert's former teaching colleague, organized a meal train for when he returned home. Marcus's mother offered to drive Zoe to visit Robert in the hospital. Even Bill Henderson, the once critical neighbor, mowed Robert's lawn without being asked. The old man's not so bad, Bill told his wife, and that little girl needs him. 5 days after his heart attack, Zoe was finally allowed to visit. She stood hesitantly in the hospital room doorway, shocked by how small Robert looked in the large bed, connected to beeping machines. There's my photographer, Robert said weakly, extending his hand. Zoe rushed to him, careful of the tubes and wires. Are you coming home soon? Not quite yet, sweetheart. The doctors want to make sure my heart is strong enough. Mrs. Garcia is nice, but I want to come home, Zoe whispered. I took pictures every day to show you. As Robert looked at the photos on her camera, mostly shots of clouds and the hospital building from different angles, Miss Thompson entered the room. Mr. Wilson, we need to discuss long-term plans, she said. Given your health situation, we need to consider Zoe's placement options. Fear flashed across Zoe's face. Robert squeezed her hand reassuringly. I'm not giving up that easily, he told Miss Thompson. I've already contacted my daughter Sarah. She's flying in tomorrow to help while I recover. This was news to Miss Thompson. Your daughter? The one in California? Robert nodded. We've been talking more since Zoe came to live with me. She's agreed to be Zoe's legal guardian if anything happens to me. What Robert didn't mention was how many late-night phone calls it had taken to rebuild his relationship with Sarah, how she had gradually softened toward the idea of Zoe, moving from skepticism to curiosity to genuine interest in the little girl who had changed her father's life. I see, Miss Thompson said. Well, that would certainly help our case for returning Zoe to your home once you're released. After she left, Zoe looked up at Robert with serious eyes. You promised nobody would take me away. And I meant it, Robert replied. We're family now. Nothing will change that. 2 weeks later, Robert returned home, with Sarah staying in the guest room in a community that had finally begun to embrace the unconventional family in their midst. 4 years later, 14-year-old Zoe slammed the front door as she entered the house. Robert, now 68, looked up from his newspaper with raised eyebrows. Rough day? He asked. Zoe dropped her backpack on the floor and flopped onto the couch. I hate Millfield. I hate this school. I hate being the only black kid in my entire grade. Robert set his paper aside. Since his heart attack, he had made a point of giving Zoe his full attention whenever she needed to talk. Today, her face showed she was truly upset. What happened? He asked. Madison invited everyone to her birthday party except me, Zoe said, her voice cracking. And when I asked her why, she said her parents thought I wouldn't fit in with the other girls. Robert felt a familiar anger rise in his chest. Despite years in Millfield, some families still treated Zoe as an outsider. I'm sorry, Zoe, that's wrong and unfair. It's not just that, Zoe continued. In history class, we're studying civil rights, and everyone keeps looking at me like I'm supposed to be the expert. Then at lunch, Aiden asked if you were my real dad or if I was adopted. She looked at Robert with tears in her eyes. I don't even know who I am sometimes. Am I your daughter? A foster kid? Black? Part of this town. I don't fit anywhere. The formal adoption had been finalized 2 years earlier after Robert's health stabilized. The judge had questioned whether a man in his mid-60s should be adopting a child, but their bond was undeniable, and Sarah's agreement to be Zoe's guardian if necessary had satisfied the court's concerns. You're my daughter, Robert said firmly, but you're also right to question your identity. That's normal at your age, and even more complicated given our situation. Zoe wiped her eyes. I want to learn more about where I came from, my birth family, my culture, everything. Robert had been anticipating this moment. I think that's a great idea. I've kept in touch with Ms. Thompson. She mentioned your birth mother has been sober for 2 years now. If you want to meet her, we could arrange that. Zoe looked surprised. You'd be okay with that? Of course, she's part of who you are. The next month brought big changes. Robert enrolled Zoe in a Saturday program in the city where she could connect with other black youth. They visited Ms. Thompson, who helped arrange a supervised meeting with Zoe's birth mother, Tanya. The meeting was emotional but positive. Tanya shared family photos and stories about relatives Zoe had never known about. She explained her struggles with addiction that had led to losing custody of Zoe, but also how she was rebuilding her life now. I'm not trying to take you from your dad, Tanya assured Zoe, nodding respectfully toward Robert. But I'd like to be in your life if you want that. As they added these new connections, tensions emerged at home. Zoe began questioning everything about her life with Robert. She wanted to change her hair, her clothes, her music. She tried on different ways of speaking and new interests with the intensity of someone searching for herself. One evening, Robert heard Zoe on the phone with a new friend from her Saturday program. Yeah, he's just some old white guy, she said, laughing. He doesn't understand anything about being black. The words stung deeply. Later that night, when Zoe came downstairs for a snack, Robert was still sitting in the kitchen. I heard what you said on the phone, he said quietly. Zoe looked down, embarrassed. I was just trying to fit in with them. By pushing me away? I didn't mean it, Zoe mumbled. Then, with sudden emotion, but it's also kind of true. There are things you can't understand about my life. Robert nodded slowly. You're right. There are experiences I will never have and challenges I will never face because of my race. I can listen and learn, but I can't fully understand. That doesn't mean I can't love you and support you while you figure out who you are. Zoe's anger deflated. I don't want to hurt you, I'm just confused. Being a teenager is confusing for everyone, Robert said. Being a black teenager adopted by an old white guy in a town like Millfield? That's extra confusing, but we'll figure it out together. That weekend, instead of their usual photo safari, they drove 2 hours to a cultural festival in the city. As Robert watched Zoe immerse herself in the music, food, and community, he understood that loving her meant supporting her journey to discover all parts of herself, even the parts that had nothing to do with him. I got in. Dad, I got in. Zoe's excited voice echoed through the house as she burst through the front door, waving a large envelope. At 18, she had grown into a confident young woman, her photography displayed in local galleries and her academic achievements impressive despite her learning challenges. Robert, now 72, rose from his armchair, his movements slower than they once were but his smile just as bright. And you? Yes, Zoe thrust the acceptance letter toward him. Full scholarship, the photography portfolio you helped me put together. They loved it. Robert pulled her into a hug, his heart swelling with pride. 8 years had passed since that nervous little girl had first entered his home. Now she was heading to one of the top photography programs in the country. I knew you could do it, he said, his voice thick with emotion. That evening, they sat on the porch swing, looking at stars appearing in the early spring sky. The conversation turned to practical matters. New York is expensive, Robert said. Even with the scholarship, you'll need money for living expenses. I've been saving from my photography sales, Zoe reminded him, and I can get a part-time job. Robert nodded thoughtfully. I've been thinking about making a change myself. Zoe looked at him in surprise. What kind of change? This house is too big for just me when you're gone, and I've always wanted to see more of the world beyond Millfield. What are you saying? Zoe asked. I'm saying, Robert continued, that I might sell this house and get a small apartment in New York. Not to hover over you, he added quickly, seeing her expression. You'll have your college life, but I could enjoy the museums, take photos in Central Park, maybe even teach part-time. So it was quiet for a moment. You'd leave Millfield? After living here your whole life? Robert smiled. You taught me that sometimes we need to step outside our comfort zones to grow. I think it's my turn. News of their plans spread quickly through town. To Robert's surprise, many people expressed sadness at their departure. We're having a goodbye celebration at the community center, Mrs. Davis announced when she visited. The whole town wants to come. The whole town? Robert asked skeptically, including the folks who thought I was crazy for adopting Zoe. Mrs. Davis patted his hand. People change, Robert. You and Zoe helped many of them see things differently. The celebration was larger than either of them expected. Principal Winters, who had initially resisted Zoe's accommodations, presented her with a Special Achievement Award. Bill Henderson, the once suspicious neighbor, brought a scrapbook of photographs he had taken of their house through the seasons. "So you can remember where you came from," he told Zoe gruffly. Most surprising was the arrival of Robert's son Michael, who had remained distant over the years. He approached awkwardly, handed Zoe a gift card, and then turned to his father. "Sarah told me about your move," he said. "It got me thinking about time and how we don't have as much as we think. I've been stubborn, Dad." "We both have," Robert acknowledged. "I'd like to visit you in New York sometime," Michael said. "Get to know my sister." The word sister hung in the air between them, an acknowledgement years in the making. Miss Thompson arrived late to the celebration, pulling Robert aside with news. "The adoption paperwork you helped Tanya complete for her other children went through. Those kids will be coming home to her next month." Robert smiled. Over the years, he had helped Zoe maintain a relationship with her birth mother and had even supported Tanya's efforts to regain custody of her younger children. "Zoe will be glad to hear that before she leaves for college," he said. As the evening wound down, Zoe stood to address the gathered crowd. Her voice, once small and hesitant, now carried with confidence. "8 years ago, I came to Millfield thinking it was just another temporary stop," she said. "But because one person believed in me, this place became home." She looked at Robert with shining eyes. "People judged him for adopting me. They said he was too old, that we were too different. But he taught me that family isn't about what you look like or where you came from. It's about who stands beside you through everything." The room erupted in applause as Robert watched his daughter. Confident, talented, ready to take on the world, he knew that every whisper, every judgment, every challenge had been worth it. New York City awaited them both, a new chapter in a story that had surprised everyone, most of all themselves. 10 years had passed since Robert and Zoe left Millfield. On a sunny June morning, the town's community center buzzed with activity as old friends gathered for a special celebration. Colorful balloons and a banner reading "Happy 82nd Birthday, Robert" decorated the walls. Mrs. Davis, now using a cane herself, greeted guests at the door. "He has no idea," she whispered excitedly. Zoe arranged everything. At precisely noon, a taxi pulled up outside. Robert stepped out slowly, his hair now completely white, but his eyes still bright and alert. He looked confused when Zoe, now 28, guided him toward the community center instead of the small cafe where she had promised him a birthday lunch. "Why are we?" he began, then stopped as the doors opened and a crowd of familiar faces shouted surprise. Robert's hand flew to his chest in shock, then his face broke into a wide smile. Many of Millfield's residents had traveled to attend, along with friends from New York and colleagues from the photography school where he had taught part-time until his second retirement at 78. "You sneaky girl," he said to Zoe, squeezing her hand. The past decade had been full for both of them. After graduating from NYU with honors, Zoe had built an impressive career as a photojournalist, her work appearing in major publications. Her photo series on transracial adoption had won a prestigious award and started important conversations across the country. Robert had embraced city life with unexpected enthusiasm, volunteering at museums, taking classes at the senior center, and making friends of all ages and backgrounds. His small apartment near Central Park had become a gathering place for Zoe's friends and his own. The party moved outside to tables set under oak trees. Robert made his way through the crowd, greeting old neighbors and accepting well wishes. When he reached Bill Henderson, the men clasped hands warmly. "Never thought I'd see you in New York City," Bill said. "You used to say you'd never leave Millfield." Robert laughed. "Life has a way of changing our plans." After lunch, Zoe tapped her glass for attention. "I have an announcement," she said, her voice carrying across the lawn. "Some of you already know that I've been in the process of becoming a foster parent." Murmurs of interest spread through the crowd. Robert sat up straighter, his eyes fixed on his daughter. "Yesterday, I received final approval," Zoe continued. "Next month, I'll welcome 11-year-old twins, Maya and Marcus, into my home." The guests applauded. Robert's eyes filled with tears as Zoe turned to him. "Dad, These children have been in 6 different homes in the past 3 years. They're bright kids who love art and photography, but they've been labeled difficult because of their behavioral issues. Her voice softened. Sound familiar? Robert nodded, remembering the frightened little girl Zoe had once been. When I told my caseworker about my own experience, she showed me their file. The system had almost given up on finding them a permanent home. Zoe took a deep breath. I realized that I learned something important from you. Sometimes the family a child needs doesn't look the way people expect. Someone in the crowd called out, like an old white man with a young black daughter. Laughter rippled through the group, but it was kind laughter, acknowledging the journey they had all witnessed. Exactly, Zoe agreed. My caseworker actually asked if I was sure I could handle twins as a single woman with a demanding career. She smiled. I told her I had a pretty good role model for doing the unexpected. Robert made his way to Zoe's side, leaning slightly on his cane. You're going to be an amazing mother, he said quietly. The celebration continued into the evening. As sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors, Robert found a quiet moment with Miss Thompson, who had remained a friend through the years. Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this? She asked, gesturing toward Zoe, who was showing her photography students how to capture the perfect sunset shot. Robert shook his head. Never. When I started the adoption process, people said I was too old, that it wouldn't last, that I couldn't possibly understand what she needed. He watched as Zoe laughed with her friends, confident and radiant. But love doesn't always make sense on paper. Sometimes the most unlikely families are exactly right. Miss Thompson nodded. You changed her life. No, Robert corrected gently, his eyes still on his daughter. We changed each other's. And now she'll do the same for 2 more children who need someone to believe in them. As the first stars appeared, Robert Wilson celebrated not just 82 years of life, but the beautiful, unexpected family that had grown from one brave decision made long ago, when he refused to let others' judgments stand in the way of love.